Welcome to the Midlife Manifesto, where we are embracing the twists and turns and transformations of midlife. I'm Arlene Schulten, your host and fellow traveler on this crazy journey. So if you're looking to reinvent yourself, rediscover your passions, or just make sense of this beautifully messy phase of your life, you're in the right place. I will be interviewing experts on a number of different topics, anything midlife, whether it be your health, wellness, perimenopause, relationships, rediscovering yourself, new adventures, career shifts, raising teenagers, you name it. We're going to discuss it all right here. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's get real about midlife, because it's more than a phase. It's our time to thrive. We can do this together, so join me on my journey. It's crazy, but let's make it some fun. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midlife Manifesto podcast. I am your host, Arlene Schulten, and today I'm very excited to have Denny Davis with us today. So I've known Denny for several years, and Denny is a holistic lifestyle coach who supports women redefine their relationship with alcohol and find the confidence and freedom they have always been searching for. So welcome to the podcast, Denny.
Thank you so much for
Lovely
having
to see you again. I saw you yesterday at a networking event, so nice to see you again. So tell us how you got to where you are.
How much time do you have?
All the time in the world.
How did I get where I am today? So it's coming up 10 year, a whole decade where I have not touched a single drop of alcohol, which is a huge celebration for me because if you had known me before, even just a couple of days before that 10 years, you probably would not recognize the person I am today. I was a very different person. From the outside looking in, I very much had a regular life. I just got engaged and we were renovating our dream home. Everything from the outside just looked, I was working and buying. I wasn't even in the wellness industry back then. And from the outside, it looking in, it looked like just, a regular life. Like I was having a good time. I enjoyed cocktails with the girls. I enjoyed long lunches, like on a weekend. I did a lot of social drinking.
Yeah.
And that social drinking it happened gradually. I'm not even sure where the turning point was. But then it would be a drink of, oh, I got home from work, I was feeling stressed, I'd have a glass of wine. Oh, I'm cooking dinner now, I'll just have another glass of wine. Well, I've had dinner, there's not much of the bottle left, I'll just finish that bottle of wine.
Yeah.
But it was so regular in my social circles. Like everyone I kind of was hanging out with at the time was doing that. So we were normalizing that for each other. Um, and I watched it was this morning with Phil, and it wasn't Holly, it was someone else. It might have been Fern or something at the time. And they were given this advice that you should have at least 2 days a week off alcohol. And I was like, I mean, at the time for me, I was like, 2 days, 2 whole days.
Are you for real?
Are you for real? Like, not even one glass of wine with my dinner or.
So you were drinking every day then?
I was drinking every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wasn't drinking, like, I wasn't your typical how we picture somebody with an alcohol dependency. Um, getting up, drinking a vodka and having to function. That's not how it looked for me. I felt like the way I was drinking was very culturally acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think it still is because it's so ingrained from certainly for me. And I think we spoke a little bit about this yesterday, maybe like, from university. From university, it was kind of ingrained. It was all about going out, socializing, cheap alcohol pops, um, and it became a habit from a young age for me. Um, and then, when I got into my late 20s and I met my husband who also enjoyed social drinking, it was a habit. It was a really unhealthy habit. And it definitely didn't seem like a problem to me. But it did get to
Well,
a
it won't if everyone else is doing the same thing. And it was interesting when we talked a little bit about university because I've got a daughter in uni. And obviously, I was at university for years. And I'm trying to think how it would have gone down had I not drunk, because I can't actually think of anyone who didn't drink in our social circle. And
right.
it's not, we wouldn't have excluded them. I do think we probably would have thought it was odd, especially, I mean, that was a long time ago. So I think more this sobriety movement or drinking less is quite a new movement. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, re it certainly even the sober curious movement didn't
Yeah,
exist 10 years ago
right.
when I stopped drinking. So maybe relatively new in the last 5 or 6 years is that has that kind of come about where okay, it's actually okay or socially acceptable if you want to take a break from alcohol
Yeah,
or dry January is a big thing as
yeah,
well. A
yeah,
lot of people do that. But it is one of the things when I speak to women, it's one of their biggest peeves, struggles, challenges. How do I tell my friends?
yeah. And is
You
it because they feel vulnerable that they won't be accepted anymore, or
yeah, and the peer pressure to just have one is a big thing. Well, why don't you just have one? It makes me consider maybe that's why dry January is so successful because if you say I'm doing dry January, nobody bats an eyelid. It's almost
yeah,
like, oh, well done, yeah, good for you.
yeah,
But beyond that, when somebody says, oh yeah, I'm just going to carry it on, then suddenly you're kind of like, you're almost threatening the social dynamic
yeah,
if that's how you relate with your friends, right?
yeah.
Like we go out, we do this, we go to the cinema, we have a glass of wine, or Friday night we watch a movie, we have a glass of wine. And suddenly one of you is saying, I'm not doing that anymore. It creates a it creates a shaky dynamic.
Well, I think you're doing something that's different. It was interesting. I was in Amsterdam this weekend with a friend, and the service in Hull in the Netherlands is terrible. And I used to live there, so they call it kind of tall poppy syndrome. So they don't want to be felt like they were lower than you, so they give you shit
Oh.
service. It almost kind of makes it an equal playing ground. Like I kid you not. Like the hotel we stayed at, the service was really good because it was a nice hotel. But you go and we were actually at a nice restaurant, but the service was so terrible. And she goes, "What is wrong with this country?" She's from Canada. She's never lived in Europe. And I guess in North America, you used to tipping 20% because so you expect very, very good service. But I said it's called tall poppy syndrome. And I wonder if this is a little bit the same. Nobody wants to do anything that's different, or they may feel like you said when we talked before, like they're being judged.
Mm.
Like I'm taking a step to improve my health, you know, edit that. Stephen, can you make them be quiet? Oh, I'll just pop that down. I'll get somebody to edit that out. All right, ready? Yeah, so I was explaining to my friend that it is like, and I wonder if it's the same scenario as well when you start doing something that's different than your close knit of friends.
Yeah. Well, I suppose when you take that decision, you kind of challenging the status quo a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah,
Like you just mentioned there, I'm making this decision to explore something better for my health or
yeah,
explore, I'm taking this out just to explore what this might look like for me. And I think psychologically it goes back to that primitive survival mechanism of um when we had to survive within a community and you needed the community to survive because you all relied on each other.
yeah,
And if you were ostracized from the community, it kind of threatened your survival, right? Because then you had to survive on your own. You didn't have
yeah.
the protection of the rest of the community. And there's almost something similar that happens within the dynamic. So if you're the one that's saying, I'm going to give up alcohol, then the threat from to the friend is perhaps like, am I going to lose my friend? Are we not
Yeah.
going to be able to? And then actually the person who's making the decision, well, it takes a lot of power, courage to make a decision like that. But it's also hugely scary because you know that you're making a decision that's going to rock the dynamic of your community, if you like, or your social circle. So I do also think there's something primitive in the decision.
Okay, that's interesting. And I guess, yeah, in groups you stick together. So you'll have a chief, but then everyone else is quite grounded into the same values, isn't it, really, of the tribe?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely takes a huge amount of courage. And there's a lot of shame attached to drinking as well. Like I had a conversation at the networking group yesterday, and one of the ladies said, it's really funny because anyone says that, oh, I'm giving up smoking, everyone's like, yeah, good
That's
for
true.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or I'm gonna give up sugar. Yeah, great for you. You do that. I'm gonna give up drinking. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, what you'll be so boring, you know? And it's really that in itself is a really interesting dynamic. Like,
Do
what
you
is
think people
that?
don't recognize the damaging effects of alcohol then? Do you think they maybe think sugar and smoking is worse for you than alcohol? I mean, surely, I guess because it is something that we enjoy and it's associated with relaxation, but I guess so is smoking.
I think the thing is smoking and sugar consumption or eating a cake, you do those on your own, essentially.
Mm,
You know, okay, you might go out and smoke in the smoking shelter, or, you know, when you've been out at a bar or you're having a break at work. But essentially, they're kind of things that they don't create a social structure around them necessarily. Whereas alcohol, there is a social structure created around alcohol.
yeah. But I guess if all of your friends smoked and you've kind of said, I'm going to quit smoking, they may be.
True.
I guess it highlights, like what you said the other day, it highlights a habit that you're almost judged. They may feel almost judged, even though you're not, that
Yeah.
you drink, it's bad for me, I'm going to stop. Maybe
And what
highlights
and what
that
does
they've
that
got
mean
an
about
unhealthy
me?
habit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you work with somebody, is it to not encourage because they've obviously made the decision, is it complete sobriety or is it decreasing the amount of alcohol consumption or is it more guided to what
It's a
they want?
good
Because
question.
I never drink Monday to Friday. Well, I'll drink maybe Friday night, but like I never drink because of what I do for work. Like I never drink during the week. Unless I mean I'm out with it, I might have a small glass of wine or something, but very rarely do I ever drink during the week. So I guess it's like you said, it's like that 5-2 almost with alcohol.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And it sounds like for you that, you know, maybe it's not having a great impact on your life. You know, like you can enjoy having a glass of wine on a weekend or on a
mm,
Friday, and you can say no, and maybe you're not having the urge or the strong urge or craving to have a drink outside of that time. For me, it wasn't
yeah,
like that.
right. But I
So,
guess if I'm in a social situation and there's alcohol, I don't think there's many, if I'm honest, I don't think there's many situations where I've said, no, I'm not drinking just because I'm choosing not to drink, unless I
yeah.
have to be early and drive somewhere the next morning. But otherwise, I'll always just go with the flow and have a few drinks. Like, I don't think, yeah, if I'm completely honest, when there's a social situation and there's alcohol involved, I will drink.
And can I ask, is it okay if I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah, of course.
Do you think that's, because I'm curious, is that a conscious choice, or do you think is it more of a habit that, or is it just that I'm going out, therefore I will have a drink?
Yeah, I think it's almost, I don't think, oh, I'm going to drink tonight, or oh, I'm not going to drink tonight. I think you get to wherever you're going and there's a glass of alcohol. So like if we have something at school or at friends or like we're going out with friends this weekend and there will be alcohol. And I guess probably before talking to you about this, I would have just had a glass of wine, not intentionally, not unintentionally. I don't really think it's just we're going out, there's alcohol, I'm going to drink it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to feel like shit the next day.
But then I suppose it's like that, and that's a really interesting awareness as well. Like, and it does make me think is there's just like how ingrained the habit is, even when it's not destructive in your life.
Yeah.
It's just there's no there's almost like when something becomes such a habit, we lose the pause to be conscious in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard of Sadhguru. Have you heard of Sadhguru?
No, no.
Um, he's still alive. He's a really amazing spiritual teacher. And he does a fantastic book. It's called Inner Engineering. It's a very spiritual book. So it's around mindset. He's an Indian teacher, so there's a lot of Eastern philosophy in it. But he
Okay.
talks about this was a bit of a paradigm shift for me because studying positive psychology, I understand the benefit of habit, but also when I understand the benefit of habit as in when we something becomes habitual, it's not taking our conscious energy,
Yeah.
we don't have to get up and think, oh, set an alarm to brush your teeth, for
Yeah.
example. We
Yeah.
just do it. And so it conserves a degree of energy for doing other things in our day. But he says when a habit becomes a habit, you're not conscious in that moment.
Yeah.
And and it was a bit of a paradigm shift because I was like, but I thought habits were really beneficial. Like they help my energy in
Depends on
the
the
best
habit.
way. Depends on the habit, right?
Yeah.
Also, how aware can you be in every moment of every habit? Like, can you even be aware of the habit enough to make a conscious choice of whether you're actually going to do the habit or not do the habit, or be present in the moment of even simply brushing your teeth,
Mm.
moving my toothbrush from this side to this place to this tooth. I mean, most of the time when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm thinking, I forgot to do that. I really need to email that person. Oh, I meant to text that person. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing the mindful stuff.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's
there's,
a little bit like what you said when we were just talking before I pushed record. You were talking about your morning routine and how important it is. Now, you probably don't think, but you do know that if you don't do those things, you don't, your day isn't as productive. It doesn't flow as well.
yeah, right. Because
Now,
then I've
those
got
are all healthy probably
remembering these
habits
things.
because you
Yeah.
probably not have a gin and tonic before you have brushing your teeth, but and there's, how many thousands of books are written about, the morning, your morning routine. It's own your morning or own your day and all sorts of things like that.
But even in that, I know I feel like we've gone off on a tangent, but
It's okay. We do that often.
even in that morning routine, more recently, in the last 6 months, I'm very much a routine person, and I'm like, and when I'm building a habit, something that's healthy, and I understand when I built this habit in, I know it's going to have the result of this will be X, Y, Z in terms
Mhm.
of whatever the impact I want it to have. And I'm quite conscious about just build the habit initially. But once the habit's built, I almost allow myself to be a little bit more free with it. So that, for example, exercise, for example, if there's a day where I'm like approaching my period and it's maybe not supportive for me to go lift
Yeah.
heavy weights, I'm going to change that up, or I'm going to
Yeah.
allow myself to do something a little bit different. And I think that's where this idea that Sadhguru says, you know, when we're really in habit, we're not being fully conscious
I see.
of
Yeah,
our
that's interesting.
choices. And I do think there's a rigidity in British culture as well. Like if you say you're going to do something, you absolutely need to do it. But what about allowing each of ourselves and each other to tune into what we need and to have open conversations?
Yeah.
I think all of this is actually really relevant and important when you're choosing to give up alcohol, even if it's not having a huge impact on your
Yeah.
life. Like I do work with women, they are not drinking very much, but
Mm.
they know that that little Friday night drink and waking up feeling rubbish, they're like,
Yeah.
I just don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
want to do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
interesting because I interviewed uh she's a fitness trainer coach. Her name's Lucy Hearn, so she's one of the podcasts. And we were talking about fasting. We were talking about training for women, and especially in midlife when your hormones are shifting. Like she says, the week before your period is not a time to do an endurance run. It's not a time to lift heavy. So it is, you may have a habit, but you also, especially as a midlife woman, you have to really look at where am I in my cycle. And I also interviewed somebody on fasting for women. And so again, so when the habit is so rigid, you're absolutely right. We're not dialed into who we are, especially as women.
yeah. And that sense of feeling, the sense of permission to do something a little bit different, the
Yeah,
sense of accepting our differences, the sense of accepting actually, you know, when I take away alcohol, for me, for example, and I know that this is common for a lot of people, there's a
yeah,
sense of like, what about that space?
yeah, exactly.
Who am I without that? Like when I go on a night out, who am I without
Yeah,
alcohol? And that's really the foundation really of what my coaching practice is about. The
yeah,
surface layer, yes, is about how do we redefine your relationship with alcohol. But actually, the root of all of that is who are you? How do
yeah,
you come to love the parts of yourself that are in the shadows? Because we all have them, the light and the dark, and it's easy to be like, oh, these are my strengths, these are all the good bits. But if we never allow ourselves to spend a little bit of time looking at the shadow, how can we fully love ourselves? We can't. We're
yeah,
always trying to keep that little bit hidden.
yeah,
And then that little bit becomes in the energy of shame, and then we're scared for anybody to see it because we won't even allow ourselves to see it.
yeah. Well, it is a little bit like an escape, isn't it? It's like gin
Mm.
o'clock. It's like the pandemic. I mean, how many people? I think everyone was struggling in the pandemic. And so I think we did turn to a drink very early in the afternoon. I remember getting messages from friends like, is it too early to drink? It's like three
Yeah, yeah.
o'clock in the afternoon. And I've just homeschooled and et cetera, et cetera. And, it was like 3 o'clock was becoming, acceptable time to drink. But I think we were all just going through the weirdest thing in the entire, like in our lives. And I guess it is a huge coping mechanism. Apparently it seems to be quite, common when women, mums, women in careers and things like that, 5, 6 o'clock comes, you're cooking dinner and you just grab a glass of wine. It's almost like you've earned this glass of
Yeah.
alcohol. It's almost like, when we give kids like rewards and treats, it's sugar. It's not, it's like, oh, you've done really, really well. Here's a pack of Haribos. And it's like, well, actually,
Yeah. And it's
we're,
really interesting you say that because it becomes a little bit of a crutch, isn't it? Like a
Mhm.
release and it's, oh, the day's been so stressful. I've carried so much. But where, and I think that's absolutely relevant, what you've just said.
Yeah.
And it's so, so, so relevant. But really, I would ask the question like, who is helping us actually have the real tools to cope with
Yeah.
stress?
Yeah. And I guess it's come down to this. We talk a lot about resilience now in this world because I was actually talking to a patient who's a teacher, and she was the last patient of the day yesterday, actually. And she was just saying, like, so many of them are struggling I think they're year 5, 6. So they would have been obviously quite young early on in school in the pandemic. And apparently, amongst teachers, it does seem to be this cohort that has struggled almost the worst. And that she just says that they have no resilience. The minute anything is hard, they just give up. And
Wow.
so I think all of these tools to increase our resilience, instead of just like, I have nothing, I probably never will fully give up alcohol. I think because I like, I don't know, maybe it's my association with relaxation. And I don't. I don't think a friend of mine said once a few weeks ago, she said, "You're so into health and well-being and longevity, and you do tons of research into, with lifespan and everything else." And she goes, "But still you drink." And I said, "Well, it's not a crutch. I think I do it as like I eat a piece of cake. I know it's
Yeah.
bad for you. A ton of sugar. I know in midlife, like my body doesn't deal with sugar as well as it did 20 years ago, but I'll still eat the piece of cake. And I guess that's how I see alcohol as well.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting, like after, talking to you about all of this, I probably will choose on certain occasions not to have any alcohol. And I think too, like I'm training for a triathlon right now, and you know, I'm supposed to do a long ride on Sunday. And if I drink a lot on, even if I have two, three, you know what it's like when you get older, you're not as old as I am, but you just do not metabolize alcohol as well. So the next day is almost a write-off. And, I now have to be more conscious about the amount I drink. Otherwise, my training program is totally off track.
Yeah. And that's a really nice reason just to be
Yeah.
it's in the situation you're in, it's like it's a game, isn't it? It's an
Yeah.
experimentation. Like, I wonder what it would be like if I went to this night out and just said,
I'm not drinking.
I have a drink tonight. Like, what's his reaction? What's her reaction? What's my reaction?
Yeah.
What comes up in me? And then the next day, like, you know, get
And
that
then
right.
you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
And actually, when I stopped drinking, I think I trained for a half marathon. And it was one of the things that I used, to tell people, I'm doing this, I'm training for a half marathon. And it was easy for me because then
Yeah.
nobody really questioned it.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things as well, is people struggle to like, what do I actually say to people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well,
And like you said, dry January is really easy. Oh, I'm doing dry January and nobody questions it.
yeah, exactly. Um, Although I do think I intuitively feel like dry January has a dark side, because if you are someone like me that had a dependency on alcohol, and it might not look like it from the outside, and
Mm.
somebody listening might relate to some of the things that we're saying, but when I say this, think that's not me, because I
Right.
thought it wasn't me either. So if somebody is listening to this and they don't really know how to tell somebody, or they've done dry January, the dark side of dry January is you can easily convince yourself that their alcohol's not really an issue for you because you've done dry January.
I see. Yeah.
So it's a great movement because it's highlighting people's attention to the impact of alcohol. Even a few glasses of wine a week
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
has an impact on our health and our energy and our long-term health, like um, our increased risk to things like breast cancer. It goes up, and women are more susceptible to alcohol than men are.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I feel like dry January is great, but if you feel like, you do have cravings for alcohol, or you do have maybe a light dependency on alcohol, then I would just, be careful that you're not kidding yourself by doing
Yeah.
dry
Yeah.
January. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like who is your main client? Do you work one to one to many, like do group sessions, or do you a bit of both?
I do. I work one to one.
Yeah.
I, in my experience, because this is this is private for a lot of people, even though
Yeah.
the sober curious movement's big, it's still we've got a very private relationship with alcohol mostly. So I find that working one to one with people really helps get to the root cause. And oftentimes we'll really focus on alcohol, and sometimes the coaching sessions are absolutely nothing to do with alcohol. It's
Yeah, I guess
actually
it's
to do
always a
with,
deeper rooted issue to everything, isn't there? Like
yeah,
even our, addictions to different foods and things like that, and exercise and everything. There's so many years prior to this that have kind of set set the stage, if you like.
yeah. So really it's an exploration of what's the impact alcohol's having on your life, and working together to establish what's the reason you want to explore this, and really kind of
Yeah.
nail down on that. And then we look at, I normally do a deep dive session on the wellness wheel. So, like all aspects of life, from
Yeah.
relationships to health to physical well-being to spiritual well-being. And then we see what areas are kind of flagged up. And it's a whole exploration. It's actually really fun. It's
It
not
must
so
be
much
nice for
about
people too
alcohol.
who have never done this type of deep dive, this type of work. That, I mean, I know you've done a lot. I've done some. But it's really interesting when you dive into your childhood, even if you feel like you've had a really nice childhood. There's always something.
Yeah, there's
Going
always
on.
something. And I think really when I've spoken to women in the past who have tried different avenues to try to give up alcohol or sugar, one of the things that kept coming up that was lacking in other programs is they never really got to the root cause for them. You
Right.
know, what's really driving this.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, this whole decade, if I could say one thing that I've got out of a decade of sobriety, it's really knowing who I am. It's
Yeah. Right.
really truly knowing who I am, and that
But
feels nice.
yeah, well, I was listening to the Davina McCall that she was talking about this, and I didn't realize she's been sober for over 30 years. But they were saying the same thing, is you really get to know who you are when you are sober for a period of time.
Yeah.
I guess I guess they were talking about mental clarity, and I guess
Mm,
uh, it's always mental clarity. It's, this consistent clarity that you have that you obviously don't if you drink regularly.
yeah. And I think initially there's the mental clarity, and I feel that lasts. But what not drinking, I find frees up so much energy for you to put into other things.
Mm.
Other
Yeah,
things like discovering yourself, hobbies that maybe you've always wanted to do and never had the time to do.
yeah,
Um, a whole lot of energy and t really time to really understand who you are, what actually lights me up,
yeah.
because I actually think boredom has a lot to do with alcohol
But I
consumption.
guess if you took somebody like me, who I don't think it's affecting my hobbies. I don't think I'm
Mm,
choosing things differently. I guess for me, like I said, I don't think I would, because I don't think I have I mean, I know it's bad for me. And actually, I know a lot of women, especially patients, who, they voice how they feel after drinking alcohol. And it is very, very different in your mid 40s, 50s when your hormones are changing. Like
yeah.
you just can't metabolize alcohol like you could before. And they know that we don't have as much as the enzyme that metabolizes alcohol than we did in our younger years. So it is very different. I mean, if you remember back when you were younger, I mean, you'd
No.
drink Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. You'd
And still
somehow
get
be able
up
to
on
function
Monday.
on Monday. Now, if I did that, like absolutely no way would I be functioning on Monday. And I guess too, the liver over time is one of our biggest detox organs. So I guess for me, it's more of a health thing, even though it's a little
Yeah.
bit, it's the accumulative effect that I
Mhm.
guess would concern me a little bit if I was drinking too much and excess.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
it
when
was
we were at the,
interesting.
go
Go
on.
ahead. In 2017, I went through something that was really, really stressful and traumatic, and it kind of quite life-changing. And I remember I made the decision not to drink at all. And so I stopped drinking for quite some time until I kind of found other ways. And I think the kids were sort of aware of what was going on. And I never wanted them to think that you deal with your problems with alcohol.
Mm,
So I was like, it was kind of like shit hit the fan. And I didn't want the kids to ever, you've got three little, people watching you deal with this thing. And I thought, I don't ever want them to turn to alcohol to as a as a way of getting through anything that's stressful. So I guess for
Mm,
me at the time, it was trying to find all sorts of, and I was already very holistically inclined anyway, but that's when I got into yoga more, um, breath work, especially and meditation. I did yoga before, but it was more breath work and meditation that, and I guess because I didn't want to become a crutch. I thought if this does soothe me, I could quite easily get addicted to it
yeah.
or actually continuously use it because the stress was not going away for a while, and I knew that. So it was interesting actually, because I guess I have had to question it in the past in terms of, and I didn't drink for a long time actually.
Yeah.
Reason.
That, do you know, as you say that, I just feel such a huge admiration for the awareness you had to make that choice, because
Yeah.
those choices are not always easy, because when you're faced with stress, maybe it would have been easy to lean into that, but to
Mm.
make that choice is for the sake of your children is hugely admirable.
Well, it does numb you a little bit, doesn't it? I mean, you don't have to drink a
Yeah.
lot for you to just kind of feel.
Yeah.
It's a bit like my mom. She used to smoke 2 cigarettes a day, and she associated relaxation with it.
Yeah.
So she would go in the garden, smoke half. She'd smoke the other half later that morning, and then she'd have another one in the afternoon that was split in two. And it was just, I think,
Disciplined.
she's very disciplined. She never smoked more than, I mean, I think earlier on she smoked a lot more, but it got down to two a day. But her association with it was relaxation.
Yeah. And alcohol does take the edge off as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
There is that sense of this is just taking the edge off what I'm feeling.
yeah. But me as a child, it was interesting now looking back, because I used to always wonder. I used to be, I don't know why. I used to hate the fact that my mom smoked, even though it was only two. And I used to poke holes in it. I guess as a child that it's damaging to your parent. So you love this person. And I think it's also like, why do you need to escape? Like, why do you
Yeah,
need to
like what are
escape?
you escaping from?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you've got three lovely girls. So we weren't always lovely, but
Yeah. Why
what
do
are
you
you
need
trying
to
to
take the
escape from?
edge off?
Why don't you take the edge off me? Maybe in my teenage years, I can understand. But yeah, it's interesting when you look at it through the lens of a child, what you might see, because the parent might think, well, it's only a glass of wine, but
Yeah.
your kids see you doing that every day or a lot on the weekend. It's a destructive behavior when it's out of control.
Yeah. And for I mean, to be honest, when my drinking got out of control, I couldn't really I was the party girl, and the people around me really loved that. I mean, even now, I'm always the first on the dance floor, like
Was
completely.
that hard for you then when you weren't drinking?
No,
Oh,
because I love
really?
dancing. I'm like,
Okay, yeah,
get
yeah,
me
yeah,
up on
yeah,
the dance floor. And actually, what I learned was I don't really need a drink to have a good time.
yeah,
What I think I needed a drink for was to feel comfortable in social situations that were naturally uncomfortable for me. And I spoke a little bit
yeah,
to you yesterday about getting my last year I got my ADHD and my autism diagnosis. And suddenly, my patterns of behavior with alcohol made a lot of sense. Like I was using alcohol to regulate. I was using alcohol to be in situations that I didn't really enjoy that much, but I recognized were socially acceptable.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and the habit became out of control. And I read a statistic actually, because it's really interesting, when you think about if you're neurodivergent, the struggle to regulate is real.
yeah,
The struggle to regulate your nervous system is real. And the statistic said, if you're ADHD, you're 43 times more likely to develop um, a toxic relationship with alcohol. And of the people that already have a toxic relationship with alcohol, or they call it alcohol use disorder now, 20% of those people are ADHD. And that's huge. That's a huge
that's quite a
statistic.
statistic.
Yeah. So there's yeah, there's a whole scope, I think, of us using alcohol as a stress relief. And then there's also this other aspect of, as women are becoming late diagnosed. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite a not popular, but it's more prevalent. We have more awareness of it now, I think.
Do you think some of this ADHD, and I'm just challenging it because I
Yeah.
guess ADHD is a very new diagnosis
Yeah.
in terms of, I guess, population. And I mean, I remember there were a few kids in school, probably one in particular in primary school who was probably ADHD, but not many.
Mm,
And now the numbers are so much higher. And I guess as a chiropractor, we're also looking at like balancing out the nervous systems, pretty much what
mm,
we do. And it's, I just wonder, our lifestyles are so different now. So we know that obviously dopamine hits from scrolling your phone, which my youngest is only 10 and some of his friends already have phones. So, I mean, and I had a patient yesterday who's an adult, and patients are supposed to ideally lay face down on the table for a few minutes just to calm down, just take a
yeah.
few breaths before they get adjusted so they're not wired before
Those
they
are my
go.
favorite few minutes.
Yeah. And I know people who, and one of the gentlemen was, I'm like, turn your phone off, just give yourself 5 minutes and just relax. And he goes, it's crazy how addictive these things are, even as an adult. So it's not just children, it's adults too. And so our brains just never stop. It's constantly go, go, go. And like I don't know because I'm not an expert in this, but I'm wondering is if it's the way we live. We spend
Mm,
very little time in nature. I know you do, but most people don't, even children don't. So whether or not that's kind of compounding this, I guess, this issue we have with regulating the nervous system and
yeah.
ADHD.
I think it's a really valid point, and it's definitely something I've thought about as well. Like,
Mm.
have we
Yeah,
created
like I'm
this?
not saying you don't have it because I'm not
Yeah.
an expert
But
in
like, to
it
what
whatsoever,
extent are
but
we aggravating it? You
yeah.
know, like, to what extent are we creating an environment where it has ADHD has an opportunity to
Yeah.
thrive?
Because
Is
like,
that, isn't it? Like, not
yeah,
not saying that. I mean, obviously, I've had my diagnosis, but it's not saying that people don't aren't ADHD. But I think it's a really valid point. Like, how is our lifestyles creating
yeah,
to this
yeah,
this space for this to thrive,
yeah,
and the detrimental effect that it's actually
yeah.
having on our nervous systems.
Yeah. Like if I look at somehow kids, like it's changing. My daughter's 19, my youngest is 10. And if I look at like my kids have always done quite a lot of sports, so they love it. It's what we do. There's a lot of kids that don't move much. And so
Mm.
there's very little, I guess, opportunity for them during the day to actually balance the nervous system because they're just sitting and they're too sedentary. So the brain it needs stimuli.
Yeah.
It needs to
And
move. That's why boys fidget, and when they fidget in class, they get their break time taken away. And
mm,
you do wonder, like it's interesting what you said about that stat, which is sort of concerning or very concerning. If you've got these kids who are not wired properly or in balance from childhood, does that then create more addiction later on in life? Because I
yeah,
guess they're looking for some regulation of the nervous system, and no one's actually telling them how to do
how
this in a
to,
healthy manner because
yeah,
sport is being dropped significantly in state schools. And so if you don't have a parent or if you're not that sporty or, interested in, like I've got a young patient who's much more into, cooking and drama and things like that. Although there's activity in drama, it's not high intense exercise, which is
mm,
what, children need so much of. So it's just interesting to see where this is going to go. And I guess looking at these diagnoses and thinking, okay, well, what is the lifestyle? And is it actually, can we do something else to balance the nervous system?
yeah. Like, where are the tools, like,
Yeah,
that kids are being taught, or even adults, right?
yeah,
That we're being taught calm the nervous system, and you know from yourself, like breath work, yoga, like these embodied practices that not only help us move our body, but like there's a whole connection, isn't there, that
Yeah.
happens when you're in a yoga practice or a
Yeah.
breathwork practice. And it never fails to surprise me when I come to my mat or I do a breathwork practice, like the amazement of the energy I create just by breathing. Like
I know.
actually the conscious aspect of breathing,
Yeah.
not the unconscious aspect, but the real
Yeah.
conscious directive aspect of making my breath do this and the way it makes me feel afterwards. And even just my a simple practice of on my mat as well. It's just something that shifts. And these are the powerful things, simple, powerful things, really, that people need
Yeah.
to know, kids in school need to know, because these
Yeah.
are the things that make the difference.
Yeah. It was interesting what you said about, when you are when you don't drink and you really begin to know yourself. I guess you're allowing yourself to go through these challenges without grabbing the glass of wine or the beer. So it's
Mm,
okay. Instead of being like, oh, I'm stressed, I'm gonna have a glass of wine. Ooh, that's better. You're gonna go question, I guess, why do I feel this way? And actually go through a bit of the ick and just this
yeah.
is how I feel. And actually I've gotten through it without needing that crutch.
And then
And
it
then
comes
having
that
a
comes back to
glass of
that
wine because you
resiliency.
want the glass of wine and you're in a happy social environment and you've chosen to have the glass of wine. It's very different to being in a stressed or panicked mode and grabbing a bottle because you need it. And I guess
Absolutely.
that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. And I guess I had to make that decision in 2017 that I wasn't going to use alcohol in that way. And it was only going to be a social thing for me.
Yeah. That is like when you said that, I'm like, this is such a huge aha moment, because it's such a huge aha moment, isn't it? The difference
Yeah.
between choosing a glass of wine from a place of already feeling full and
Yeah.
whole and happy in ourselves versus choosing a glass of wine because I'm so stressed and I need this to make me feel better and I need
Yeah.
to take the edge off. It's like
Yeah.
they're two totally different energies,
Yeah.
intentions. Yeah.
There is one of the things that I love about British culture is the pubs. And
Mm,
I think
I
this is
second
where I
that.
struggle because for men, they're not going to meet their mates for a dog walk and a coffee, are there? I mean, some will, but it's not. Women do because I
Yeah.
think we need relationships on that deeper level, possibly more than men. I could be wrong. But I think that's where the pub culture for men is so important. I don't know if men would meet up for a alcohol-free pint of beer. But it was interesting. We did the Heineken tour on the weekend, and we had like a 12 o'clock tour. And I was like, I don't want a Heineken at 12. So he goes, oh, you can have a low alcohol one. And I was like, okay, we'll take that. So we had that one. And you get two tokens. I gave one to this guy and he thought I was nuts. He goes, why are you not wanting your beer? But thank you. So, I mean, there were these two young lads. I think they were quite happy to get a couple extra tokens. And he goes, oh, there's also an alcohol-free beer. And I said, oh, well, when I'm in my 60s, I'll come and have the alcohol-free one. But like, so there is, I mean, I did the Heineken tour years and years ago when I lived there. So this is probably going back 20 years. And I don't remember there being alcohol-free beer on
Yeah.
tap, so I think it is changing. So I guess men could go, but will they have an alcohol-free beer? But I think that cultural, I guess the relationship with the pot, I think it's really important for men. And I think
Mm,
it's nice for a village. Like it
yeah.
pulls villages together. And I think that's one of the things I love about Britain is kind of that pub culture. Everyone kind of just people from all different walks of life come together.
Yeah. But wouldn't it
Well,
be nice to
I
have
really
something?
hope that never dies because I know pubs are struggling right now and they're dropping and there are so many that are closing because of bankruptcy and they can't, just because of the rising costs. But I really hope that we can keep those because I guess as a foreigner, we don't have pub culture in Canada.
Uh-huh.
You go to the bar, but it's nothing. We also don't have villages like you have in the UK. And it is such an important part, I think, of British culture. I really hope it
It's
never
a
dies.
community space, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it would be really nice to see pubs evolve a little bit, like
Mm.
just what else can they offer for people that, because I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think there's like, you go to a pub for a Sunday lunch or like a pub
Yeah.
quiz, or
Yeah.
there is that community aspect to it, but it would be nice, and we are seeing it more, more alcohol-free options, but also the truth is when you're like, what are the activities the pubs are offering as well? Because sometimes you can drink and drink and you can sit for hours and drink and
Yeah.
converse, but when you're not drinking, there gets a point where actually, okay, like it's kind of time to leave, or,
Yeah.
like, but what are the activities that are happening for,
Mm.
so it's inclusive? And we were having that
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
about inclusivity
Yeah.
yesterday. How do we make it accessible for everyone to come and enjoy the space?
Yeah.
So it's not just about drinking.
Yeah.
And because I agree with you, I think pubs in the UK, they do have that kind of
I
warmth.
think I do. I think they're great. And men can go in there by themselves and they'll meet other people. And it's a
Yeah,
little bit like a friend of mine lives in a village and one of the pubs is closed down. It's closed down. I think one of the owners passed away, but it's possibly being taken over by the community. And I guess they were looking at like what else to do with it. Like you say, how do you diversify? But I
mm,
guess there is such a big road biking culture as well. And I think, you see these, I mean, it's an area I'd like to see some pubs kind of diversify and, just almost, coffee cake in Lycra, and it's
yeah,
just, it's healthy. It keeps these pubs alive, hopefully, it's something else that they could do. It's
yeah,
almost kind of not tea room, but almost
yeah. My
like
husband's
Lycra
always
stops.
said that. My husband's been sober for 5 years now, and he's always saying pubs should open early in the morning and do
Yeah,
coffees and have high-speed Wi-Fi. So like
exactly.
actually people can go take their laptops and do a couple of hours work, or they
Yeah,
can have a meeting there, and actually
yeah,
it kind of keeps alive what you're saying, like that kind of community space.
yeah, yeah,
I actually think it's a great idea, whether pubs are open enough to
yeah.
diversify
I know, because it doesn't,
and
like you
do
say,
tea
it
and
doesn't
cake
only
for
just have to
cyclists
be.
or not.
Yeah, I know there's a cafe that's just closed near Benambra, and I just keep thinking this men in Lycra where they're going to go, because I mean in the summertime it was absolutely packed, and it's funny because it's mainly men in Lycra. You might see the odd woman, but it's really funny. So I mean they're clearly looking for something else to do that's a bit healthier, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think yeah, if pubs diversified a little bit. I guess we totally are off track here, but trying to
Yeah.
find somewhere for us to go. Yeah, just be healthy, but also keep the pubs alive. I think they're important. And actually, if people have a healthy relationship with alcohol, I don't really think there's anything wrong with having, you know,
Yeah.
in a healthy, happy kind of social environment.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, I think you realize midlife, you just can't. I think too, the like when you're talking a little bit about the liver, like we were before, it's metabolizing all these dirty estrogens as well. And so it gets tired. It's like it's one of the biggest detoxification organs we've got. And it gets tired after a while. So, stressing it every day is because
And we're living longer,
yeah,
like I want to live a long,
I
healthy,
know.
happy life, and
Without drugs.
without drugs, and
Yeah.
anything that's leaching my energy has
Yeah.
got to go.
Yeah.
Anything that's leaching my energy, it's got to go, because I want to be 95 and still be able to go to my spin class and
Yeah.
still walk up on my yoga mat. Maybe it'll look a little bit different, but I believe that we can have that.
Yeah.
But we have to do the work now. And sometimes, I have my shamanic teacher says, sometimes we have to sacrifice the short-term pleasure of the ego for the long-term pleasure of
Yes.
the heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to say, I'm not going to have that, because actually my bigger goal is in 40
Yeah.
years. I still want to be living this life as vital
Yeah.
as I am now.
Yeah.
And we just, that ultimately, it's like, is that the choice? That's the choice. Like,
Mm.
whatever you're doing now is going to impact your body and your energy in 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to pay that price?
Yeah. It's interesting. My conversations with my patients the last 5 years have really changed. Because
Really?
I say to them, I said, you're probably going to live to about 85 as a woman. Men, and I said, when you look at the statistics, the last few years, the quality of life is actually quite bad. It's quite low. And, I always say to them, I'm like, this is, you're in pain now, or you've got these symptoms now, or your energy levels are this now. Like, where do you think you're going to be in 20, 30 years time if you don't sort this out? So sometimes they're hard decisions, they're hard habits. But yeah, it's really interesting. I had a conversation with a woman the other day, and she was drinking about 3 Diet Cokes a day. I'm like, where do you want your bones to be? And she came in, yes, she goes, I've just stopped. And I'm like, really? You've gone from like 3 cans to none? She goes, yeah, you terrified me. I'm like, well done. Because, I mean, you have to cut it out totally, but that is a lot. And that is
Yeah,
going to have devastating effects. And you have to start thinking, how do I want to hit 80, 85, 90? Because we're living longer. And like you say, I want to have living my best life in my 80s still,
absolutely.
you
Yeah, me
know?
too. And I know that the foundation of that is now.
Yeah.
And that means
Got to do the
minds,
work.
you've got
Yeah.
to do the work. And that means my mindset, it means my energy, it means my food, it means my exercise. And I don't see this none of any of this stuff as a chore.
No. And I guess, like you say, I can still get on a dance floor.
And I can still go on the dance
Not,
floor.
it's not, you have to give away your social life. It's actually very positive, but I think a lot of people will see it as you're taking away rather than you're
And
building and adding.
yeah. And do you know what? I can relate to that because it felt like that for me when I
Yeah,
decided not to drink.
yeah,
And that's why the one-to-one support is good
yeah,
because there's a lot to process in that because you've built a lifestyle based on beliefs that you
yeah.
have, beliefs about how to have fun. But actually, I feel like I've got double the time. We always say like, "Oh, I wish I had a bit more time in the day," or "Wish I had a bit more. I need 48 hours in the day." When I stopped drinking, I was like, I've got an abundance of time
Why did you feel like you had more time then?
because I didn't have the hangover,
I
because I
guess
had
because you were
clarity.
drinking more. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was
Okay.
drinking more, and my just talking about pubs. My husband and I went out for a friend's birthday. We met at a pub in town, and we just had a few non-alcoholic beers, and we were there for a few hours. But I know the point when it's like I'm ready to leave now,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's fine. Like we're able to leave, and then we got home and we had a really nice movie night, and we had a
yeah,
takeaway, and it was like we had like 2 nights in one.
yeah,
Whereas, and we had the next morning where we were able to get up fresh and go to the gym and whatever we needed to do. Whereas when I was drinking, I didn't have that. It
Do you
was
think your
just
husband felt pressure to you, or were you because you said he used to drink socially and then he's been sober or he's not been drinking for 5 years, you said?
5 years. Yeah. It definitely changes the dynamic of
Yeah,
it changed the dynamic of our relationship. And it's really helped us grow together though, because we've had to accept the changes. And when you do take, we've talked already about when you take alcohol away, suddenly you've got to be present with those uncomfortable feelings. But
yeah,
then when you work through them, it becomes easy. It's like when you
yeah,
first go to the gym, you can only lift 3 kg, and then suddenly you keep going, and then you can lift 10 or
yeah,
whatever. And so initially we kept doing a lot. We maintained our social life, and I
yeah.
just chose not to drink. Um, and he carried on drinking. And then after a couple of years, it kind of there was a we had to have a conversation, like
Okay.
because my life was changing so much, and I was really had propelled myself in this wellness space. I trained as a yoga teacher. I was meditating. I was, incorporating all these different practices in my life. And we started going, our path started to go in different ways.
Yeah,
And actually, because I gave up alcohol, it did highlight his unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And
right.
he tried to fight that for a while. And then he was like, you know, I have an unhealthy relationship with
Right.
alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give up as well and see how I get on.
Yeah.
And actually, we've done amazing things with our lives, like that we just would never have conceived of doing. Like Steve climbed Everest, did Everest summit a couple of years ago. He took up mountaineering. He's done all of the
So I
seven
guess
summits.
why, so you don't think he would have done that had he not given up alcohol?
He couldn't have done it. I mean, it was a lot of dedication to do the
Yeah.
training,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he always had a desire to do it.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first met, he said, "Oh, I've always wanted to climb Kilimanjaro." And he'd been saying it for years and years. And one day I just said to him, "Well, oh, for goodness sake, will you just go do it?
Yeah.
Because you've been saying this for so long." And he was still drinking at the time, but he found a passion for that. And I
Right.
think that that all also filled the gap that drinking took. And
Yeah.
he's had amazing success. Like, I can't believe
Yeah.
he's only been mountaineering for 6 years and he's done these amazing things. And, we done some mountains together, and, the places that I've been, the trainings I've done over the last 10 years,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it if alcohol was still in my life.
Right. That's interesting because some people do it with alcohol in their life, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I'm not sure if they managed to do something like the Seven Summits though.
No, it's interesting because I'm training for a triathlon and like I've got a coach for the very first time and the training's quite like I'm not a competitive triathlete by any means. I'm doing it for myself, but it's a lot of training.
Mm,
And I think probably being conscious about it, I probably don't drink. Like before, I would probably just have a glass of wine on a Saturday night because it's a Saturday. Now, if we're home, I won't.
mm.
Whereas before, if we were home, I'd have a glass of wine with dinner. But now I would just be like, oh, I've got to be on my bike for 2 hours tomorrow. Like, I'm just not going to have
Yeah,
it.
I want to be on my game because it's
Yeah.
important to you, right? And you're
Yeah.
doing
It's
something that,
interesting. Because I guess as me, like, I don't think I have an issue. I still don't think I have an issue with it. But I can now see, like, there is yeah, I guess another side altogether, really,
yeah,
about just being more intentional about when you have that drink
yeah. And then when you have a
or not
higher
having it.
purpose, I think it's a lot easier to say, I'm not going to do that. Like, if your
Mhm.
higher purpose right now is, to focus on your
Yeah.
triathlon, it's not a challenge, is it, to say no? I'm not going to
Mm,
have that with dinner because actually I've got something else that's motivating
yeah.
me right now.
And actually pushing 50 in a couple years, you do like your hangover, like even one glass of red wine, you wake up with brain fog. I do.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
wake up as
mean,
early.
and if you're perimenopausal, I mean, you're experiencing brain fog anyway. Like, nobody
Yeah.
needs another layer of that.
No, please no. Oh, it's a whole experience, isn't it? Well, you're not there yet. I can't imagine.
Not, I thought I was, and then we spoke about it. I started
Yeah.
fasting, and I feel like I might have staved it off for a few years with some lifestyle choices, but
Interest.
I can't
Yeah.
hold it off forever.
No, you can't, but you can go through it more gracefully than some.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is interesting when you do fasting because we talked a bit about Mindy Pels, and she obviously I had somebody who trained with her on the podcast talking about fasting. And it does actually, I think a lot of women want to shut the period off, like the cycle off. Like the number of my patients who never cycle or never have
Well,
a bleed is incredible to me because you're stopping an estrogen detox every month. And I would imagine
it's
that would,
building up.
I guess if you think of function, you would think that that would make your detoxification system less than optimal. And I guess there's I had a very spiritual life coach for a while, and she talked a lot about your cycle and being a woman and being him very in tune with it. And it was, I was like, yeah, most women aren't. Like, I never tracked my cycle. I never thought about how I feel or how I should train or how I should eat or anything like that. Or if I was a bit more anxious or if I was tired, if I just didn't feel it, I never really tracked it in accordance. But we are
Mm,
women and it has a big impact on us. So, yeah, I think that affects the liver as well. And then you start drinking, and it's just this machine just gets really tired.
yeah. But it's interesting that you said about tracking your cycle just then, because also I think that's a really powerful way to become to get in touch with your body.
Yeah.
And like you say, to become aware of how you're feeling.
Mm.
And when you're aware of how you feel, you can make different choices.
Yeah.
Like if you're listening to your body
Yeah.
and you're aware of exactly how you feel, then you can listen to the signals. What do I need in this moment? And then you have an opportunity to honor that.
Yeah. But
Um,
we live in such a fast-paced world. You wonder actually if anyone is actually intentional about much of what we do. Like you're just busy. And then it's like, shit, I'm stressed, glass of wine. You know?
yeah,
Um, yeah, like today is just too much. So it like women, if you think of women, because we've got so many different roles now, especially if you've got kids and run a business and house and everything, it's a lot of plates spinning at the same time.
yeah. And I almost feel like women need a space to come off the rat race and just share, to
Yeah,
share like
yeah,
what we're experiencing, almost so we can give ourselves each other permission, like it's okay to slow down. 'Cause
yeah,
sometimes I feel like we're all trying to not keep up with each other, but like just keep up with the expectation.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
nobody changes the expectations, then we're all going to burn out.
yeah. Well, that's why that obviously we were both at Grantley Hall for the Women's Wealth and Wellbeing, which was it was such a good combination because you've got all these entrepreneurs, business owners, obviously trying to build a career and be successful. And then you also had a panel of health experts that were, you can't have this without this. You have to do the self-care. Otherwise, you are going to burn out and get sick. And so the
Yeah.
two have to come hand in hand.
They have to come hand in hand. And nothing in this world, in this whole universe exists without connection to the
Yeah.
other. Like
No, and it was such a
everything.
nice day.
Is-
It was all women. It was a lovely day, actually.
Yeah. And there was a really good mix in the day, I think. Like you said,
Yeah.
there was the wealth panel and the well-being panel. And I think in terms of all the guests, we were a really nice mix as well.
Yeah.
It was an electric day, wasn't it?
It was really good. Yeah, the energy in the room was incredible.
It
And it was
was
a beautiful space.
it was. That helps.
Yeah, my husband said, well, that was a hard ticket to sell as a day at Grantley Hall. I thought, yeah, sold.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be there. Do you have any final words for anyone who is, I guess, contemplating going down this avenue?
Listen to your intuition.
Yeah.
Always listen to your intuition, because no matter what noise is happening out here, if there's a little voice in your heart that is saying to you, you need to change this relationship with alcohol, then just whatever you do, just take one step towards
Yeah.
changing that today, whatever that looks like. Contact someone, read something, find out, but listen
Yeah.
to your intuition, because nobody knows you better than you do.
Mm. I think, give Denny a call. I think what's interesting about you is that you approach it from more of an energetic and more spiritual side.
Mm,
And I think that helps you find the underlying root cause of
yeah,
why, why we've got these patterns, which I think is really, really important. It's like, even with anything, even with chiropractic, we're trying to find the root cause of the problem rather than you can patch anything up quickly. But if you really want to solve it, you have to do the work.
yeah, absolutely. A resounding yes.
Yes. And then we all hit 85, 90, 100. Still dancing on the dance floor, eh?
Bring it on.
Well, I want to thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'll put Denny's all her contact details in the show notes. Please get in touch with her. I've known you for years and years, and she is amazing at what she does and just so passionate. So if you're even thinking about it, just give her a call and just have a little one-on-one, see where she can take you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ah, thank you. That was amazing.